Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Start, Grow and Monetize Your Podcast with me, James Bird, and him, the podpreneur, Alex Chesnell. He hates when I do voices, and the more he hates it, the more it makes me want to do weird voices.
Musical theatre wannabe.
There you go. Well, you're growing musical theatre talent in your house, aren't you? And now you work with it as well. You're surrounded by talent, my man.
Lord above.
Right, today on the podcast, we're going to talk about how successful can a podcast launch be, and we're going to talk about it in the context of this very podcast that you're listening to, because this is a brand new podcast, relatively speaking. Obviously, at the time of recording this, if we put it out in sort of the order that we've recorded, it'll be about 6 months down the line because we recorded so many in advance. So we are going to stick this one in. What have I said at that? Stick this one in as almost like a little bonus episode to break down the results of the recent launch of the podcast. So first and foremost, if you've been with us since the beginning of this podcast, all of the 10 episodes ago or whenever we managed to get this out in time, thank you, genuinely thank you very much for being here. We hope it has been entertaining. We hope there's been education and information that ultimately you can implement, because we honestly believe that you're only as good as the results you can help people to get. There's no point in us doing this podcast if you don't listen to it and then go and action it. If you just listen to it and don't do nothing with it, frankly, it's a waste of everybody's flipping time. You stop listening, we should stop making it, but hopefully you are actioning this stuff. So we're going to talk about the launch of the podcast. How did you find the launch of this Power Pod, Mr. Chisnell? 200-ish you've done now?
Yeah, I genuinely am really, really happy with the launch, with the results.
Yeah, as am I.
Yeah, good. And you know, so we should be. We put a lot of work into it. We somehow, like everybody listening and watching will learn to do as well, you need to fit this into your life. You need to make it a priority. If it's not a priority, it will not happen. 100%. You will just procrastinate, and it will never happen.
If it's not a priority, don't start it.
No,
until it can be a part of your priorities.
Agreed.
Don't start it.
Yeah. So for me, wasn't expecting. I don't know why I wasn't expecting, but
it's very niche, isn't it? It's a niche thing, which
it
is maybe why.
But we got it to a number one ranking in not one, but 2 countries.
We did indeed.
And we will reveal those countries. And
what a cliffhanger. If you're watching on YouTube and you're going, oh my God, he's like Mr. Beast. I can't wait till the end for the payoff now. We must remember, I'm going to write it down. Tell them countries. Write it down, fine.
And also the number 2 spot in our own country of origin,
right, yes.
The U of K.
Which was very, very good, because it is a super competitive marketplace. What I was really especially pleased with regards to the UK is it went to number 2, sat there for like a week and a bit. It did not budge, which goes to show that it was getting consistent downloads. It was getting good engagement. Now, this is one of the things that all of the podcast platforms say, ratings and reviews don't count for anything. But I really think they do, because the more you get, I think we had 10
I was going to say,
5-star
how many
reviews.
Did we get as well? You got on your Chartable, because that gives all the... If you go to... there's no point saying go to Chartable, because Spotify are getting rid of Chartable, and it collates all of the reviews from all around the world and puts them there rather than going to Apple, and it only gives you the reviews from the country that your computer is URL thingy majiggy.
Wow, this has got really, really high tech. Yes, indeed.
You know what I mean, though.
I do know entirely what you mean.
So the podcast went to number 2 in the UK chart for the category of.
He's forgotten as well. How to in the education category. And we've talked about how to set up being in the right categories and the subcategories, and that is a great example of it, because it is in the education category, the subcategory of how to, and then we also put it in the
how to start, grow, and monetize
your podcast.
Yeah.
And what else was it in? It was in marketing for business, which I don't think it ranked in marketing.
No, it didn't.
Sometimes you'll find this when you put your podcast live, and we've talked about RSS feeds before, whether you're using Libsyn, Buzzsprout, Podbean, Captivate, which I'm using at the moment, which I think is brilliant, by the way. If you are using those platforms, you can basically submit to usually 2, sometimes still 3.
Sometimes 3,
categories or subcategories. Now, sometimes, for whatever reason, the algorithm will pick subcategory number 2 is the one it prefers. I think there must be like an algorithm thing, but it didn't rank at all for marketing. It didn't even show up in the marketing or business at all. It's solely focused. It went to how to in education. which I guess as the title has got how to in it, maybe that was another reason as to why that might have been the case potentially.
And how many countries did we reach as well? Because it went to number 1 in the UAE, United Arab Emirates. Not to keep you hanging till next week.
I was about to say.
And Malaysia as well.
It did, yeah.
And then it also charted in Australia.
It was number 63 in Australia. It was in the UK. It was... Did it go in Ireland? I think it might have done as well.
I think it was Ireland as well. What was annoying was the podcast that was number 1 stayed at number 1 as well. Didn't budge.
No, for well over a week.
Yeah.
Well over a week.
I think it's still there.
And again, it's one of those prime examples. Yeah, they're not letting you log into Chartable anymore. Surely someone's going to come up with the Chartable competitor. Knowing where the charts are and all your ratings and reviews and stuff, it is super useful. But anyway, so yeah, we appeared in a bunch of different categories and charts. So that's great. We had a bunch of reviews. We had a load of people. More than anything, though, what you'll find when you're launching a podcast is we had really genuinely good feedback. Like people were saying, this is amazing.
Yes.
I've listened to the show. It's super actionable. It's really relatable. It's really helping me out. It's still in the charts in the UAE. It's still in the Malaysian charts. It's still in the UK. Great British charts. Yeah. It is still in the Australian charts. So yeah, still
getting downloads.
Still big in the game. Still getting downloads. Yeah, do you
want to share our downloads with our...
Yeah, so given that it's a niche podcast, it's just under by the time you listen to this, it'll be just under 1,000 downloads, which I think for a niche podcast is good going. And also
happy with that.
Just reiterates the point that actually to get great results for a show, you don't need massive numbers. But what that has done, like I've had people reaching out already about coming on and being a guest. I've had people who've got, inquired about Pod School off the back of it. Yeah. Now, again, remember that the idea, the reason and the rationale of it actually creating this podcast in the first place is as a funnel for Pod School. We've said that a bunch of times. We don't shy away from that at all. The strategy is mega free value on the podcast, even more mega free value in Pod School, the main channel, and then there's a paid for option in Pod School Pro,
all of the value,
which is where you get all of the value
and all of us.
The training courses. There's more one-to-one time. There's more, just more support around the launch or the growth or the monetization of your podcast.
More access to us.
More access. We could be doing live events and all that kind of stuff.
Access to our network, to our teams, all of that kind of stuff.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah. But there is loads of value in advance.
In-person opportunities to meet us.
I mean, give it a big sales pitch down the barrel of that camera there. Go. Give it a sale. No. But ultimately, the reason and the rationale, as I say, overarching is to get people into Pod School. And it has done that. It's done that really, really well. We've had... I don't know, 40, 50 more people joined recently, I think.
Correct. Yeah, it's around that. Yeah.
Which, again, you might be looking at it and going, well, is that big numbers? But actually, for people who are really super interested in a niche, we've talked about this loads of times, it is better to have an inch wide and a mile deep with regards to engagement with your audience, with regards to... I don't want, frankly, I couldn't care less if we had 10,000 downloads an episode for this podcast, because if there's not...
And if not one person went through to Pod School...
Exactly that. You could also... So I use things like tinyurl.com, which tracks links, and I put links in different places. So, for example, I can see that in terms of links that have been clicked via the podcast, in fact, I will do an update right now.
Go on,
links
take us to that update.
62, 58, 110, 56, 166.
What is he talking about?
So there's been about
numbers.
300 or 400 clicks from the podcast to our different platforms related to Pod School.
Nice.
So in terms of driving traffic, we've had about 1,000-ish downloads at the time of recording, and roughly 40%, good maths there, 400, take away from 1,000.
Wow.
Incredible maths. 40% click-through rate. But actually, if you look at the average click-through rate online is minuscule. It's like 4%.
Right.
So if you're getting 40% of people, again, just goes to show that actually intent-based marketing, if you could be super niche around your subject,
a podcast,
is really, really worth doing. So, and I'm really annoyed that it's not showing me the number of reviews that we've got as well at the same time.
Okay.
Which is getting on my nerves. Where's reviews?
You can't find the reviews.
I can't find it. Anyway. But also, as well as that, so in terms of like the ratings and reviews, I'll also do a live in real time update on the old YouTube. Sorry for this terrible listening experience, but I think it's going to be worth it. So we've had over 2,000 views on YouTube as well. And we've also had 18.3 hours of watch time. We've had...
Was that 17 hours of me and 1.3 of you?
No, it says 18.2 of me and 0.1 of you, which is a little bit weird. But yeah, so we've had, just under 2,000 views. We've added 23 subscribers, and that's in 2 weeks at the time of recording. Which again, when you're looking at this and you're looking at probably other... massive podcasts, you're going, well, you've only got 23 subscribers and you've only had 2,000 views and you've only had 1,000 downloads. But you start to combine that stuff. 23 people, every time a new episode goes out, they get a notification about it. There's now just under 200 people in PodSchool free. PodSchool Pro, we've now got 15 members. We had 3 people sign up
10 left.
Instantly. As soon as we went live with it, because of the value that had already been created in the group. And we actually ended up having to launch early because somebody had accidentally...
James panicked and pulled a ripcord.
So we had one of our existing members of PodSchool, our freemium version, found a link to the secret
Didn't cover your tracks, did you, mate? Didn't cover your tracks.
Didn't cover my tracks at all. And she went in and said, I'm number 1. And I was like, ow. And also, not only have people signed up, but people have been signing up for an annual subscription.
Year. They signed up for a year in advance.
So in 2 weeks, as a summary, we've made $1,000.
More.
We've had more than $1,000. Yeah. We've had 4,000 views / listens. We've driven 40% click-through rates. I think overall that ain't a bad podcast launch, baby.
And about 1,000 downloads. Yeah,
and about 1,000 downloads. Yeah,
and 2 number 1s and a number 2 in 3 different countries.
And we have been in. I can do another live update, guys. Let me check.
Here it comes.
In terms of the analytics, if I click into here, click on new, click on stats,
waffling.
Click on
still waffling.
Analytics. This is a relatively new platform for me. With analytics, here we go. We have been currently listened to in
how many countries? What do you think, listeners? 5 countries, 10 countries, 15 countries, 50 countries, 150 countries. Drum roll. Let's go live to the answer.
It is 16 countries. Thank you, UK, awesome. United States, France, Australia, Sweden, the UAE, India, the Philippines. Thank you also to listeners in Switzerland, Jersey, Germany, Russia, Bangladesh, Canada, Kenya, and Malta.
Thank you, Malta.
Big up the Malta crew. So again, in terms of, it's got a global audience. It's put money in our pockets.
Yeah.
And it's driven 40% click-through rates to our ideal target market, to the platform that we control.
All the Johnnies.
Which is all the Johnnies. Again, listen to a future / previous episode about our ideal avatar being called Johnny, which I don't know why we find really funny because we're very, very juvenile. But it just goes to... And the other thing for us that was really important is that having launched...
We've got a new sponsor.
Oh, Jesus Christ. He's on about getting an energy drink sponsor like nobody's business. But we have launched, because we've launched 400 podcasts, you can kind of go through the motions. And obviously, we love all of our clients, but
we do.
You do get to a point where I think it's really good as a practitioner of your craft to go back through that process again. Because I've learned a bunch of new stuff. I'm like,
Same.
When we started in 2017, AI wasn't a thing. Show notes weren't really a big thing. No. There was no video. There was no video clips. There was no short form. And by the way, guys, in terms of the reach that we talk about here, we haven't even gone live really on YouTube Shorts. We haven't gone live on TikTok.
And we haven't really promoted YouTube.
We haven't really promoted YouTube at all, because obviously the primary focus for us has been the audio. And at the same time, we've had the podcast launch, we've had the free course launch, we've then had the paid course launch.
We've had a lot of launches.
So that is actually probably a really good thing to make you aware of. That if you're launching a podcast, I would say give yourself a bit of breathing space around other stuff. I've got a client who's launched a massive... like a new web portal CRM system that she's branded, and she's already got a couple of hundred existing members of it, and she rebranded it and relaunched it, and she was going to do her podcast the week after. She's like, look, I'm just slammed with inquiries about the new CRM system, so we've had to push it back 2 or 3 times now. So give yourself the breathing space, because you want to really be able to You don't want to bang on about your podcast too much because people will be like, okay, I get it, you've got a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't care. But we've talked about it before in terms of like the promo of your podcast. You really want to be letting people know about 2 weeks in advance. You want to be launching multiple episodes on the launch day. And then there's that long tail effect of the results that you're getting. Because I'm still now receiving DMs from people going, oh, I've just discovered this new podcast, really like it. Thanks for putting it out there. Just discovered you on YouTube. So just give yourself, I would say, the breathing space to actually maximize the opportunity. Because it's not just the launch, the launch day. There's probably a good 4 to 6 week period, which we're only literally scratching the surface of.
We are, but we wanted to share this. I think it's a valuable
exactly
lesson.
That.
Do you think, here's a question. I'm actually going to go with another question and then come back to that question.
Well, amazing, because none of us knew what the question was.
Well, I've forgotten both of them already.
Sure.
Okay, any regrets on how we've gone about this? Not life in general. No, we'll be here all night.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I made the right woman. I mean, she is quite high maintenance. I can say that because I comfortably know she never listens to a single thing that I put out on the internet, which is absolutely fine. No, anything that I regret?
Anything you would have done differently?
No, not really. I think it's been done really well. I think I would have the one thing I would have done is I would have started to hammer Shorts and TikTok in advance. We should have set that up and just had that pumping, because I know we've said it a bunch of times
there
before.
will be a punishment for him. Don't you worry.
Well, you were involved as well, my love. You could have jumped in if you wanted to. But also, I actually know on a we've said it a bunch of times, the battle for long form attention is being fought in short form platforms. We should have gone earlier and harder on TikTok.
We talked about it. We got the TikTok. We didn't, for a variety of reasons. But again, listen, we're not beating ourselves up about it. And there's a reason I asked you that. And it's like, you can't do everything that we tell you would be great to do for a launch. It's impossible. But if you pick a couple of things and do them well, and again, we focused in on the audio because we've been, meanwhile, we've both got young families. We're trying to run different podcast agencies. We don't have the same agency. We have different podcast agencies. We also have other podcasts. I'm trying to do live workshops as well. Working,
It's a big entrepreneur event that you've all of a sudden got involved in.
I know, loads. But for me, I think the one thing I would do differently, take your point with the shorts. I'll take that and the TikTok. I would have given a little bit more breathing space between podcast launch, free community, paid community.
100%, yeah.
We just again, it's it's the nature of, I think, who we are, and we're ambitious. We talk a good game. I don't think we gave that the attention that each of them probably deserved individually. But hey, it's not perfect, is it? No launch is ever perfect.
No, that's it.
Ever.
And for me as well, the other thing is, because I like to go through this process. I've done it every year since 2017. If I think about it, I've launched a new show for myself. Obviously, I've done bunches for clients, but actually going through it and getting my hands on it myself, because this was a podcast about podcasting, I probably could have leveraged definitely the skill set that you've got within a couple of members of your team who are absolute gangsters, and they were like, hey, let's help, and I've been a little bit like, no, I want to learn, I want to do it, because I found out a bunch of new processes for prompts on ChatGPT, how to make optimized show notes, how to make optimized YouTube descriptions, which we'll talk about in future episodes, because I think it's super valuable. But I probably could have learnt it in one episode and then just done it.
He was like, my precious,
I want to do it. I don't want you to touch my YouTubes. Leave my shorts alone. That's what I call it, my shorts.
my YouTubes.
Anyway, but we'll keep you updated, and every couple of weeks we will let you know on what has happened, what's been the big impact of the show. Number one, it's nice for us to just have a look back and go, God bloody hell, look what's happened in the last
look what we've achieved,
couple of weeks. But also, I think for you guys and girls watching and listening at home, I think it's really important to understand, for a couple of people who are, we don't have infinite budgets to just chuck at Facebook ads. We haven't got
we're not backed by Spotify for 100 mil each.
No, exactly. We are independent creators like you guys and girls probably are watching this content. We haven't got VC money to be able to affords to ramp up every show.
A team of 30 on one podcast.
Exactly. Sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and get some elbow grease involved to get the result that you want. And also, ultimately for us, we also want to make sure that the results that we've got, this is why we're showing it as openly and transparently as we are, because the results we've got are very easily achievable if you have got an expert podcast on a niche subject and you have done the promo right. What we don't want to do is come on and go, hey, we got 50,000 downloads. We're number one around the world. And we've been asked to go on Jay Leno. Is that still a thing? Off the back of this podcast, because it's not realistic for everybody. And I see loads of information out there. Launch a podcast and create a 6-figure business. It's like, bullshit. Like, it can be done.
7-figure, I say.
We've done it. If it ain't
6-figure.
I ain't interested. But you see all that kind of stuff. But this is a real world experience of a very niche podcast in real time. And if you've enjoyed this episode, do let us know. I know we will say give us 5 stars. Do still give us 5 stars, and let us know on YouTube what you think of this as well. If you like the breakdowns of the specifics, we can maybe do some screenshots and stuff if that's useful.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We'll start ramping up the shorts and the TikTok in the next couple of days. So maybe in the next few weeks, we'll circle back and do another update episode, which can show the impact of the short form.
Yeah, and again, let us know if you find this valuable. We'll, the plan was let's do it once a month, and it's actually maybe we'll do it every other week.
Daily.
Oh, okay.
Chisnell wants to do it daily. He loves a podcast, this fella.
So maybe we'll do it every other week, but we'd love to get your feedback. If you find this valuable, let us know. And I'll tell you what, one metric which would be good to track would be consumption. So how long people are listening to each episode. Like the average episode we think is, roughly is about 16 minutes for this show.
Yeah.
When are people listening up to? If it's 1 minute, we might change the tactic. If they're listening to up to minute 16, then maybe that tells us maybe we want to go for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So things like that can determine the length of your podcast, which is probably the most frequent question we get asked around podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of little tools. We'll definitely do that, because there's also loads of little tools that are showing consumption levels. Like, it was always quite difficult to look at, but actually now the back end of Apple Podcasts, for example, they've got much more data. So maybe we'll do a breakdown. But again, only if you guys at home find it useful. So let us know in the comments on YouTube, please. Let us know in the comments on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. When you leave that 5-star review, see what I've done there? Subconsciously told you to leave me a 5-star review. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Let us know what you think. And if you do enjoy it, we will do more of these episodes. And if you don't like it, well, sod ya, we won't do any more. But thank you for listening. We appreciate you massively. And we'll see you on the next podcast about podcasting here on How to Start, Grow, Monetize Your
Podcast.
Jesus Christ, Chisnell. Could you not feel I was chucking to you at the end there? He's useless. Bye.